everyone, this is Janet Wang. I am a visual artist working from North Vancouver, and I will be leading you in another art project today. So these are weekly sessions that we're going to be releasing, 4 in total, every Tuesday on the Artists for Kids website. Now what I'm showing you on the screen is a small sample of a larger drawing that I did. Now these drawings are actually made out of even more drawings, and so I'll make smaller drawings, so each building on here, each little segment, each person was a separate drawing that I cut and pasted on the computer, and I repeated to create a larger pattern. Now this pattern that I made here, this was for the city of Regina, looks a lot like a map, and in fact it might look like a map or the way that you might see an environment in a game. And that's because I'm using a special type of perspective here called isometric perspective, where you can see everything equally from the front of the screen to the back of the screen. Now, you can see I've animated, so I have one of my little figures here walking through the space. And that's what we're going to be thinking about today. We're going to be thinking about how we can observe the space around us or think about our movements and how we can communicate that through different types of lines and drawing. So we're going to create our own map and we're going to create our own repeating pattern. Hi everyone, and welcome from my studio from home. I'm just going to show you what materials we need today, and you can see here first of all I'm set up to work in my studio area. So I've just set up my desk with a little drawing board. You can use your kitchen table or whatever you're using right now for your desk as you're working from home, or you can find something that maybe has a hard surface like a hardcover book that's got a nice big cover maybe, or a board that you can hold on your lap as long as it's nice and smooth for you to draw and color on. So for our drawing material today, all we'll need is one single sheet of paper. We just want a regular weight and regular type of paper, so it can be matte, which means it's not shiny. And if you hold it up to light and you put your hand behind it, you should be able to see through it. Okay, so I can see the silhouette or shadow of my hand through this piece of paper right now. So that's the kind of paper we'll want. And in terms of what we're going to draw with, we can use lots of different things. A Sharpie would be great, or any ink pens as well too. You can choose to use crayons or pencil crayons. We're going to start off with a darker color, and then we'll add color onto that if we want to afterwards. So those are some other things you might want. The last thing we're going to need is to find a window in your house. At one point of this project, we're going to use that window as one of our tools. Now, it will need to be daylight for this to work. If you don't also have a nice window that you can get to easily, the other thing you can do is, I actually have this table here that has glass on it. I can actually shine a flashlight through it if I want. You can use something like a glass coffee table. That can also work, and you just put a light underneath it, okay? But a window is one of the easiest things that we can use. Okay, so I'm gonna get you guys to come closer to my artboard and I'll show you what we're going to work on. Okay, so what we're going to start off with here is our piece of paper. And what we're going to do first is we're going to fold this into quarters. So to do that, we're first of all going to take our piece of paper, fold it in half one way. And so when I fold it, I'm going to just match up my corners and then push down from the middle and out. And that's my first half. And then we're going to match it and fold it the other way with these other corners here matching. And then again, press from the middle and out, okay? And when we unfold this, what we'll see now is our piece of paper has been divided into quarters. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sections I'm going to work with. Now, what we're going to think about today is the idea of mapping. And the idea of mapping is we're going to think about places that we would go to and how we might move, or how other people around us are traveling from one place to the other. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing to think about right now, as a lot of us aren't moving as much as we normally would, or we're not going to some of the places that we normally would go to. So what we might want to think about are the smaller movements we're doing around our house. We might think about things that we usually will do and move, and think about places we'd like to go as well too. And then we can share some of these ideas with our friends or with our family. So if you have a parent or a friend that's also, or a sister or a brother that's working on this, and you are at home together, you can share some of your drawings and ideas with each other. So in my family, one of our most important members is my dog, and she's really lovely. She's sleeping on the bed behind me right now. And one of the things I always like to see is, of course, when she is settling down for one of her naps, her many naps. She's an old dog. She likes to travel, and this is where I'm going to take my pen and work in this top area here to start with, in a little series of circles. So she'll maybe kind of start, and I'll travel with my pen maybe from the top, in these kind of funny little circles, and the circles kind of get smaller and smaller, and this is her on her bed. And as she comes into the center, then she's pretty happy. And as she's getting happier with where she is, then she might tuck herself into a nice little kind of ball. And she puts her paws underneath her chin, and she tucks her other leg underneath her, and then this is her tail right here. So there's my dog, and she's sleeping, and I love to see her how she's always walking in those little circles. So that might be one of the kind of little trips that we might see happening around in this area here. Now, I'm going to try and connect each of my drawings from one square to the other. So another one of the kind of journeys that we've been taking a lot is the same thing with my dog. My kids and I like to go take our dog for several walks a day right now. So one of the walks we might take is we'll walk up to our school. And so we'll think about that little journey. So maybe we're going to leave the house. Well, we'll have to wake up the dog, of course. We'll leave the house. Oh, and someone probably forgot, their jacket. So we'll come back to the house, and then we'll go back out. And there's kind of a steep hill that goes up to the kids' school. And that's one of the walks we like to take. And then we arrive, okay? So that's just kind of a little wiggly line. And I just kind of like sometimes my line to have a bit of variety. So this one's nice and rounded, and it kind of all fits smoothly into each other. That's kind of like my little dog's path as she tramples out her little sleeping area. And then this is our idea of our walk, where we might wander around. Maybe we're going to pick a flower from the side of the path. So remember last week we were talking about the idea of finding things on our walks, like flowers and so forth, for color. So remember, you can always go back to the last video and watch one of those. Maybe we're going to walk through some lovely trees. And that's one thing that's really nice. There's lots of big trees around us here in North Vancouver. So I'll draw a couple of trees. I can draw a few more of those. And then I can think about that as a kind of a nice shape in that area. Now, I'm just going to actually turn my paper around. You don't have to do that, but you can choose to. So I can continue my line going to the next area. Maybe when we come back home, I need to make a lunch for our family. So what I might think about is going into my kitchen. And this is one of the smaller kind of little trips that I do around my house. And to show my kids and my family love, I wander back and forth in my kitchen, from cupboard to sink, to the cutlery drawer and so forth, maybe to the fridge to find different things for them to eat. I'll draw a little apple here, just simply, maybe they want to eat some bread. I know I've been making lots of bread for everybody. And some other things as well too, okay? So you can see each of these sections here, I've used different types of shapes, different types of line, and I'm just kind of letting it be a little bit free form. I'm not really worrying about anything being too perfect. That's not something I have to really worry about. Now, normally every day I usually have to go to work, and I'll get into my car and drive there, or maybe I'll be driving to my studio. So when I'm driving, maybe I have a much faster line. Go down onto the street, drive carefully of course too. I might go over the bridge, and then I'll go through the streets, make my safe turns, and then maybe I'll arrive at my place of work or at my studio, which is a really lovely place as well too. So you can see for each one, I have some different types of lines. Maybe I've done little mini drawings with them as well too. Maybe I'll just do a really simple car here along the way. Now you can choose to make your map a little different. You might want to make a little map to help find a treasure somewhere in your house. Maybe you can show a map of how your walk looks like and show some of the things on there. So you can do lots of different types of maps. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to use the window next to do our next step. Okay, if you have a sibling or a parent that's doing this with you too, you guys can line yourselves up at the window and maybe share your drawings back and forth, and you can work together. Okay, so I have my drawing that I just did with the 4 different types of lines and maps that I created here. And now I've got it taped up to my window. Now, if you don't have tape, you can just hold it up with your hand. If you are using a piece of tape like this is a type of paint called painter's tape, but if you just have something like masking tape, one of the things I like to do, that I learned from Artists for Kids, is you can just take that piece of tape, put it against maybe your jeans or something, or your t-shirt, and just takes a little bit of the lint off your clothes and just makes it a little bit less sticky, okay? So it won't tear your paper when you're taking the tape on and off to hold it in place. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my piece of paper in half. And when I fold this in half, what you can see here is I can see my other lines coming through. So the first thing I might choose to do is look at some of these lines and trace them onto the other side of my paper, okay? So I actually folded that the wrong way, so let me fold it the other way. I want the drawing side out. Okay, so there, and now we can see those lines again pretty clearly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all start, maybe just so this is a little easier to see my different layers, I'm going to start off with using a blue pencil crayon for this one. You can use a pencil or something else, maybe not as heavy as your ink drawing, but you'll see if you've used a nice black or dark color of ink or pencil crayon with a heavier line, you can see your lines pretty clearly. So I'm going to trace what I see here. And so that's an interesting thing. Where we're traveling might be the same place someone else is traveling, but we might just be going in slightly different ways or different directions. So this is an interesting way to think about how we actually can connect with other people and communicate our journeys and our directions to them. And we can think that maybe we'll run into someone along the way, and from a nice social safe distance we can say hello, tell them a little bit about where we're going, what we've been doing, what our lives inside our homes have looked like as well too. And you can trace as much of that other line as you like or as little. But what I'm trying to play with is this kind of nice idea of letting the shapes overlap each other. And there's a nice contrast between my kind of squiggly, rounded lines here, as well as my straight lines. Okay. So that's my first tracing. I could trace this one here too, but maybe what I might want to do is fold this a different way. So I can fold this way, and now I can get a different set of lines on here. So maybe I'll put my nice kind of straight lines. I think this was my journey through my kitchen. I always feel like I'm kind of going over the same lines again and again. Okay. And maybe you can think about what kind of things are you doing every day that maybe are your new routine or your new map that you're creating. And your lines don't have to be exactly what you had before. And if you can't see your lines too well, one of the things you can choose to do is just go over them with a slightly darker line, and that can help you see them a bit better. Okay, and maybe I'll fold that a different way. And this is a good point that you could even have it flat and then take maybe your siblings or your parents' drawing and you can put it underneath yours, and you can try and add in their lines on top of yours and see what that might look like. So maybe it's idea also that we're thinking about how all of our journeys, all of our lines where we're traveling, all of our ways we talk to each other and move around each other, that they're kind of also a lot closer to each other right now, right? And it's kind of interesting to see how someone else's day, even in the same space, can look different than yours. Okay, so I have taken my drawing off of the window, and I kind of liked how some of the lines looked being left as the pencil crayon, and it had a nice contrast to the heavier, darker lines of the black ink that I used. Now you can choose to trace them all again. You can see some of the lines I decided to trace in a slightly different way using some different mark making. So I did some little dots, kind of maybe for the slow paw prints of my older dog, more solid lines for maybe the line of the car or my movement around my kitchen. I also chose to take some of the shapes where they overlapped each other here and turn those into an area that maybe I would fill in. So there'd be some contrast to some of the other parts of the page. And so I can start to create this nice little rhythm of things that are heavier versus things that are outlined. And you can find lots of little opportunities for different shapes, different types of lines. I did a little dash line here for a kind of faster movement as well too. So it's nice to add a few different things. And you can see also the other thing I decided to do was add some color into some of the areas. So nice warm color there for my dog. I also chose to keep going with the blue that I was using before. So I chose some nice cool blues, maybe one light, one dark there, as well as my nice kind of warm red there that I'm using as kind of a nice complementary contrast, so nice opposite colors. But you might choose to use whatever colors you have available to you at home. So maybe you want to show a couple of different greens if you want to show about being outside, and that's one of the things you were thinking about with your mapping. Or you might want to think about maybe your map isn't of a real place and you want to be a little bit more fantastical. So again, some opposite colors, some nice violet colors that we see there. That could be a good way of adding some contrast. So one of the things you can think about too is how we use our color. Maybe we'll keep our color maybe a little bit more limited, so choosing maybe 3 to 5 colors that we find interesting, and then playing with some contrast of different shapes and spaces. And you can see here, if you keep going, you can fill in some more areas. I even did a few polka dots in this kind of funky little rainbow shape here. Some of the shapes I took from this one were actually in collaboration with my kids' drawings. So I actually used theirs, overlap my drawings on top of theirs, and trace some of their lines onto my drawing, just so we could have some very different types of shapes and lines and movement and gestures on this collaborative drawing here. So it's kind of fun to actually see how our days, our maps, our journeys might be very different than other people's, but also see where they might connect in different places and create all these interesting new shapes. So that's kind of one of the fun things to do. Now you can choose to keep your drawing and put into your gallery, maybe put onto your window. You can choose maybe to share this with us on Instagram or add our email address as well too. Or you could also choose to maybe mail this to somebody, email it to them, maybe to somebody that's further away or somebody that you can't see as much as you would like to. So this could be a good way of sharing some of the ideas and places you're thinking about as well too.